Hello, noble families and students. I hope you are well today. I'm coming to you today with a video on Charlotte's Web Chapter 10. Tomorrow's video on Friday will be Charlotte's Web Chapter 11, and after that, I will be done making Charlotte's Web videos into new things with math and reading. You're welcome to finish the book on your own. The website that I'm using, or if you have the book, it would be great if you could finish it. It's a really good story that I read when I was in elementary. So, definitely encourage you to finish it if you haven't already. Go ahead and get into the video. Chapter 10, titled An Explosion, and I'm going to go ahead and read. Day after day, the spider waited, head down, for an idea to come to her. Hour by hour, she sat motionless, deep in thought. Having promised Wilbur that she would save his life, she was determined to keep her promise. Charlotte was naturally patient. She knew from experience that if she waited long enough, a fly would come to her web. And she felt sure that if she had thought long enough about Wilbur's problem, an idea would come to her mind. Finally, one morning toward the middle of July, the idea came. Why, how perfectly simple, she said to herself. The way to save Wilbur's life is to play a trick on Zuckerman. If I can fool a bug, thought Charlotte, I can surely fool him. People are not as smart as bugs. Wilbur walked into his yard just at that moment. What are you thinking about, Charlotte? He asked. I was just thinking, said the spider, that people are very gullible. What does gullible mean? Easy to fool, said Charlotte. That's a mercy, replied Wilbur, and he lay down in the shade of his fence and was fast asleep. The spider, however, stayed awake, gazing affectionately at him and making plans for his. Summer was half gone. He knew she didn't have much time. That morning, just as Wilbur fell asleep, Avery Arable wandered into the Zuckerman's front yard, followed by Fern. Avery carried a live frog in his hand. Fern had a crown of daisies in her hair. The children ran for the kitchen. Just in time for a piece of blueberry pie, said Miss. Look at my frog, said Avery, placing the frog on the drain board and holding out his hand for pie. Take that thing out of here, said Zuckerman. He's hot, said Fern. He's almost dead, that frog. He is not, said Avery. He lets me scratch him. Nice. The frog jumped and landed in Mrs. Zuckerman's dishpan full of soapy water. You're getting your pie on you, said Fern. Can I look for eggs in the hen house, Aunt Edith? Run outdoors, both of you, and don't bother the hens. It's getting all over everything, shouted Fern. His pie is all over his front. Come on, Frog, cried Avery. He scooped up his frog. The frog kicked, splashing soapy water onto the blueberry pie. Another crisis, groaned Fern. Let's swing in the swing, said Avery. The children ran to the barn. Mr. Zuckerman had the best swing in the county. It was a single, long piece of heavy rope tied to the beam over the north doorway. At the bottom end of the rope was a fat knot to sit on. It was arranged so that you could swing without being pushed. You climbed a ladder to the hayloft. Then, holding the rope, you stood at the edge and looked down and were scared and dizzy. Then you straddled the knot. It acted as a seat. Then you got up, all your nerve, took a deep breath, and jumped. For a second, you seemed to be falling to the barn floor far below. But then suddenly the rope would begin to catch you, and you would sail through the barn door, going a mile a minute, the wind whistling in your eyes and air. Then you would zoom upward into the sky and look up at the clouds, and the rope would twist, and you would twist and turn with the rope. Then you would drop down, down, down out of the sky and come sailing back into the barn, almost into the hayloft, then sail out again, not quite so far this time, then in again, not quite so high, then out again, then in again, then out. And then you jump off and fall down and let somebody else try. Mothers for miles around worried about Zuckerman's swing. They feared some child would fall off, but no child ever did. Children almost always hang on to things tighter than their parents think. Avery put the frog in his pocket and climbed to the hayloft. The last time I swung in this swing, I almost crashed into a barn swallow, he yelled. Take that frog out, ordered Fern. Avery straddled the rope and jumped. He sailed out through the door, frog and all, and into the sky, frog and all. Then he sailed back into the barn. Your tongue is purple, screamed Fern. So is yours, cried Avery, sailing out again with the frog. I have hay inside my dress. It itches, called Fern. Scratch it, yelled Avery, sailed back. It's my turn, said Fern. Jump off. Fern's got the itch, sang Avery. When he jumped off, he threw the swing up to his shut her eyes tight, and jumped. She felt the dizzy drop, then the supporting lift of the swing. Opened her eyes, she was looking up into the blue sky and was about to fly back through the door. They took turns for an hour. The children grew tired of swinging. They went down toward the pasture and picked wild raspberries and ate them. Their tongues turned from purple to red. Fern bit into a raspberry that had a bad-tasting bug inside it and got discouraged. Avery found an empty candy box and put his frog in it. The frog seemed tired after his. The children walked slowly up toward the barn. They too were tired and hardly had enough energy to walk. Let's build a tree house, suggested Avery. I want to live in a tree with my frog. Picture swinging ladder, okay, and they climb up the ladder to the hayloft, and they jump down and swing out through the barn door. Kind of scary. I'm going to visit Wilbur, Fern announced. They climbed the fence into the lane and walked lazily toward the pig pen. Wilbur heard them coming and got up. Avery noticed the spider web, and coming closer, he saw Charlotte. Hey, look at that big spider, he said. It's tremendous. Leave it alone, commanded Fern. You've got a frog. Isn't that enough? That's a fine spider, and I'm going to capture it. He took the cover off the candy box. Then he picked up a stick. I'm going to knock that old spider into this box, he said. Wilbur's heart stopped when he saw what was going on. This might be the end of Charlotte if the boy succeeded in catching her. You stop it, Avery, cried Fern. Avery put one leg over the fence of the big. He was just about to raise his stick to hit Charlotte when he lost his balance. He swayed and toppled and landed on the edge of the trough. The trough tipped up and then came down with a flap. The goose egg was right underneath. There was a dull explosion as the egg broke and then a horrible smell. Fern screamed. Avery jumped to his feet. The air was filled with terrible gases and smells from the rotten egg. Templeton, who had been resting in his home, scuttled away into the barn. Good night, screamed Avery. Good night. What a stink. Let's get out of here. Fern was crying. She held her nose and ran toward the house. Avery ran after her, holding his nose. Charlotte felt greatly relieved to see him go. It had been a narrow escape. Later on that morning, the animals came up from the pasture, the sheep, the lambs, the gander, the 7 goslings. There were many complaints about the awful smell, and Wilbur had to tell the story over and over again of how the arable boy had tried to capture Charlotte, and how the smell of the broken egg drove him away just in time. It was that rotten goose egg that saved Charlotte's life. Goose was proud of her share in the Avery falling, breaking the. I'm delighted that egg never hatched, she gabbled. Templeton, of course, was miserable over the loss of his beloved egg, but he couldn't resist boasting. It pays to save things. A rat never knows when something is going to come in handy. I never throw anything away. Well, said one of the lambs, this whole business is all well and good for Charlotte, but what about the rest of us? This smell is unbearable. Who wants to live in a barn that is perfumed with rotten egg? Don't worry, you'll get used to it, said Templeton. He sat up and pulled wisely at his long whiskers, then crept away to pay a visit to the dump. When Lurvy showed up at lunchtime carrying a pail of food for Wilbur, he stopped short a few paces from the pig pen. He sniffed the air and made a face. What in the thunder? He said, setting the pail down. He picked up the stick that Avery had dropped and pried the trough up. Rats, he said. Phew! I might have known a rat would make a nest under this trough. How I hate a rat! And Lurvy dragged Wilbur's trough across the yard and kicked some dirt into the rat's nest, burying the broken egg, all of Templeton's other possessions. Then he picked up the pail. Wilbur stood in the trough, drooling with hunger. Lurvy poured. Flops ran creamily down around the pig's eyes and ears. Wilbur grunted. He gulped and sucked and gulped, making swishing and swooshing, anxious to get everything at once. It was a delicious meal. Skim milk, wheat middling, leftover pancakes, half a donut, the rind of a summer squash, 2 pieces of stale toast, a third of ginger snap, a fish tail, 1 orange peel, several noodles from a noodle soup, scum off a cup of cocoa, an ancient jelly roll, a strip of paper from the lining of the garbage pail, and a spoonful of raspberry jello. Wilbur ate heartily. He planned to leave half a noodle and a few drops of milk for Templeton. Then he remembered that the rat had been useful in saving Charlotte's life, and that Charlotte was trying to save his life. So he left a whole noodle instead of a half. Now that the egg was buried, the air cleared and the barn smelled good again. The afternoon passed and evening came. Shadows lengthened. The cool and kindly breath of entered through the doors and windows. Astride her web, Charlotte sat moodily on a horsefly and thinking about the future. After a while, she bestirred herself, descended to the center of the web, and there she began to cut some of her lines. She worked slowly but steadily while the other creatures browsed. None of the others, not even the goose, noticed that she was at work. Deep in his soft bed, Wilbur snoozed. Over in their favorite corner, the goslings were night song. Charlotte tore quite a section out of her web, leaving open space in the middle. Then she started weaving something to take the place of the thread she had removed. When Templeton got back from the dump around midnight, the spider was still. That is the end of chapter 10. So Charlotte is able to narrowly escape her life. Avery tried to catch her. Um, so that's definitely development in a story. Again, I will read chapter 11 in the next video. Please don't forget to check the classroom on the daily. I will be posting some things tomorrow and coming weekend about how things are going to be working in the month. So please make sure you check in Google Classroom. Highly encourage you to watch videos. And starting next week, you're definitely going to need to watch the videos on the math lesson to help your scholar understand. Of course, you can help your scholar as well. But I would highly encourage you to watch the videos because I'll be going over how to do problems. The scholar is going to be okay. I will be coming out with a schedule as well that your scholar can follow if they're able to, or at home during the day, um, with a parent or grandparent or aunt or uncle or brother or sister. I would definitely please let me know if you need anything at all. Need assistance with anything. I posted today my Google Voice number that you can text, you can call, especially from 9 to 3. So feel free to use that instead of Remind. I feel like that'll be everyone to use that number in your text me or call me. I'm happy to help as much as I can. Obviously, I'm still watching Colby at home, so sometimes it's difficult to do everything I'd like to be able to do, but part I can assist. So much and for Friday's video morning, 8 a.m. out.